that's what happens and can always happen. Obviously, most people out there are going to say in the heavyweight division, or actually in boxing, period. That's the allure of the sport to many. That there's all of a sudden the unexpected, the theater of the unexpected can be there in your living room. But it's also what happens, Ken, when you got a guy who only had 7 amateur fights. Extraordinary what Dillian Whyte's done. You know, he did have kickboxing matches, yes, but he had 7 amateur fights. He's fighting guys in this particular case. It's not me just, just out there strolling, saying, well, there's guys in this business. When you've got only 7 amateur fights, you're fighting guys with 100, with 150. It's true. In this case, yeah, it's really true. Povetkin, who I trained, who we won a world title with, he had 200 amateur fights. He was a gold medalist from the Olympics. I was there. I called his fights in the Olympics for NBC. I called 4 Olympics for NBC. So here's a guy with 7 amateur fights fighting a guy with 200, over 200 amateur fights. That's where the difficulty comes in. Replacing that experience or making up for that lack of experience. Because it covers so many dimensions, Ken. People don't realize it covers confidence, instincts. It's like a guy who's been at war, and you got another kid who's coming out of military camp, and he's going to war for the first time. And he understands the basics because he's been in camp, but he doesn't understand all the consequences. He hasn't had the feel for war. He hasn't experienced that, the reality of the war, that you can't let up your guard for a second. And he let up his guard for a second. And listen, it can happen and it has happened, but usually guys with the kind of experience I'm talking about, they don't get caught that kind of punch at any point when they're ahead, whatever. They don't get caught that kind of clean punch because it's a punch that their experience that I'm talking about doesn't allow them to get caught. Their fear, their nervousness. Dillian Whyte was part of it. This was really, really could be in the dictionary for the definition of being overconfident, if you want, at that point, for assuming, taking for granted, because he had dropped Povetkin twice earlier. And again, before I go any further, I'm going to say again, Dillian Whyte, hats off to you. Extraordinary that you've done what you've done in your career and beaten some good fighters. But what I'm saying is there's no getting around this, that you didn't quite have what you thought you had. Where a guy who's been to war, who's had those kind of, what I'm talking about, doesn't let up. I'm not knocking him, but doesn't let up for that split second. Yeah, again, this is the poster child for being in a position to take something for granted, overconfident. After he dropped in the 4th round, he dropped Povetkin, and now the 5th round, early in the round, he gets caught. Where it's like if you're a lion tamer. It's the business you're in. You work in a zoo and you feed the leopards. You can't go in that cage. And I watch them. I go there with my grandson, and you see them. They go in there. They know what they're doing. They go in there to feed them, but they know where they are. And not for a split second, not for a split freaking second, can they loosen their attention. Can they let go of their friend? What's their friend? Fear. See, people don't like to talk about that. Oh, fear. Come on. We're fighters. No. You better understand it. You better understand it. Yeah, we work to make guys calm. I work my backside off to get a guy calm, Ken. You were in camp with me where you can see everything, but never relaxed. Never to the point where you're calm, you see everything under control, in an uncalm place, in a dangerous place, but never relaxed.
How much do you credit Povetkin for the slick punch versus saying Dillian got a little bit too relaxed there? Like, what?
No, all of it. It's all part of it. Yes, all part of it. Listen, also habits, technique is part of it. Povetkin shouldn't have been that close. I'm being very careful here because I'll tell you, it's not a. When you're at this, it has to be. He shouldn't have been that close. Dillian hasn't developed enough. He's extraordinary in a lot of ways, what I'd say. But he hasn't developed enough. And I don't think he realizes it. I think he just shrugs it off. I made a mistake. Well, we know that, but why? Why? How? He hasn't developed an identity yet. And he'd probably have trouble at this point maybe digesting that. But where identity is identity. You're not Jake LaMotta 1 minute and Ali the next. It's ingrained. It's consistent. It's you. It's your identity. You're not going to go out and be, Tom Cruise later. I don't think so. You're Ken Ryder, right out. You're not gonna do that. I mean, it's your identity. It's got to be consistent. He hasn't really formed his identity where, at his size, he needs to be set on his feet at all times and control real estate. He needs to be the king of his kingdom. His kingdom is in front of him, and he has to be the lord of everything in front of him. He has to have a line that people don't cross. If they don't cross, he's in a tower, and they don't get past that. That he makes sure that they don't cross that line, and if they do, he has to know how to react. Like a guy coming up the hill, you're in a war, and he does get past the tower somehow, or gets in close. What do? You stand there drawing. He's near your tower now. He has infiltrated space that shouldn't be infiltrated. You go to DEFCON 3. This has to be taught immediately. He's down near you. He can chuck a grenade at. So now it's not a matter of, now it's DEFCON 3. Get out of the tower. Get out of the tower. Once Povetkin infiltrated that space, he shouldn't have, but he did. Once he infiltrated that space, get your head up, get out of the tower. Don't throw back, get out of the tower. Those little nuances, they got to be taught, they got to be experienced. This kid hasn't had that. He hasn't had that. I don't think he realizes it, to be quite honest, to that extent, because he trusts his instincts. He trusts his natural abilities, what he's been through in life. I agree with him. You've done an extraordinary job, but there's still more to this business that hasn't been touched on. You understand? You with me?
I'm with you.
It hasn't been touched on. And again, your identity, where you're always set, where you're keeping a guy in front, you're not letting him get. You have to work on that, those habits. The habits, yes, the experience and heart of Povetkin saved him. I give him credit. But also his technique, his habits, pulled us out of the fire for him. And the lack of certain habits that I'm touching on allowed the door to open. The lack of it on White's side. That's what happened. You have to look at these things. That's what happened. You don't see you never see some of these top guys get caught that kind of punch. They get caught, they get broken down. Sometimes it's a collection of punches, barrages. They get worn down. They get time to clean. But that kind of position, you rarely see that. With Dillian Whyte, I had watched some film on him. And the one thing, there's a lot of things you could talk about with a guy on seven. And again, extraordinary character that he got to this point. But the one thing that I would have said to him, you're always getting hit clean. Like he got dropped in the Rivas fight, the fight before. He got dropped in, well, I don't know, did he get dropped or just hurt? He got hurt in the Parker fight. He got hurt in like all the fights, you know, for the most part, at this level, he was getting, before the night was over, he was getting caught clean. Shouldn't happen. I know you say, it's boxing. No, shouldn't get caught that kind of point. There's a reason. And I'm sure the attitude was a fighter's attitude. You know, we'll correct it. Did you really correct it? We'll correct it. It won't happen next time. I'll be more alert or whatever. But you can't be more alert if you're not aware of where and why it's happening. You know? So you're a tightrope walker. You're walking 1,000 feet above the ground. You can't afford not to be alert. Again, I'm going backwards. You have to have every element that you need. That's part of the teaching too. It's not just X's and O's. To tell the guy, you bring the fear, nervousness, awareness, alertness, controlled, not overwhelming, but control. But have it there when you're walking on that tightrope. Be ready for a gust of wind. Be alert, be aware. Every second counts on it. You don't just for a second so. No. So he had gotten the warning signs, but he didn't. It's hard, but he didn't correct the warning. He didn't pay heed to the warning signs. Just, hey, I'm a guy, I'm still a work in progress to a certain point, whatever. And, you know, I just shrug it off and no, it'll happen again. You have to understand what we're talking about here. You do. And what happened in this fight, I remember telling Povetkin a million times, teaching him that after you jab, at the very least, you move your head so you don't get counted. Because he was getting hit right hands. So you move your head. And if the guy, and sometimes you can force a guy to do things. You hit him with the jab, you move, he's going to respond with a right hand sometimes. But the main thing is just a habit. And it was there. You jab, you move your head so you don't stand stationary. So you don't get hit. You move your head so you don't get hit with a right hand. So what did he do? He knew he had to take control after being dropped twice. He came in, he got in, he had to be in a certain position. He got into that position. And the warning sign, as much as he was winning the battles, maybe he was getting ready to lose the war. Whyte, again, very hard to look at. I get it. Because I was thinking when I was watching it, Ken, I was shocked with the Sunday, but I wasn't shocked beyond that. I wasn't. You know why? I was watching a fight and I was saying, I tweeted it. So I'm not just talking. I tweeted it. I said, he's getting in too close, too easy. He's getting into Whyte's body. I didn't care about the body. I cared about the position. A guy with short arms and who could punch, who was a former world champion, who's fighting a tall guy, shouldn't be getting in there. He shouldn't get in there that easy. He shouldn't be getting allowed. It's like walking in the White House. I want to see the president. You walk in, I'm doing pretty good. And you just keep walking down the hallway. You shouldn't get that far. You know? So he was getting in there. It's like sooner or later, something's going to not be good. Something's not going to be good. I was thinking that. So he got in. He hit a jab, and he did what he was taught. He moved his head, because that's what you do, to not get counted. And you're in position, if the guy throws the right hand, you're in position to hit him with a counter. And I remember teaching him in the gym, the more traditional, you go, boom, you hit him with a left hook. But I said, sometimes go over there and give it the same look as it's going to be the left hook. But you have the option of throwing the uppercut because most guys don't do that. They usually throw the left hook. The uppercut is less frequently used, but it could be very, very effective because the guy's not expecting it from that angle. And if you look at the eyes of Whyte, again, when he got in there, he was just looking at his own business. No, different business now, Ken. Different business, baby. It's changed. He got in. Different business. Those things are, again, no 200 amateurs. I'm just saying. But you got to be taught too, aware, understand that. And so when all you saw, if you saw Whyte's eyes, he wasn't thinking about what was over there. He should have been. He was just thinking about coming right back. Once the guy infiltrated that danger area, that area X, let's call it area X. Once he penetrated area X, you can't just throw back. He's in area X. That's where the instinct, that's where that teaching, that's got to be there so you don't get hit. And that's where those guys don't get hit those kind of punches. That's why. And because once he's in there, you don't just throw back. No, he's in there. And if you saw the eyes, they were just, and it was just like, and I'm sure that, again, he let up a little because he had knocked him down. So there was a little assumption. No assumption in this business. No taken for granted. No, that's your enemy. That's your enemy. That's your enemy. That's your enemy. There's none of that allowed. That's why I'm a maniac in the gym. You can't have that. Those are habits too. It's not just a habit. Throw your jab, rotate it clockwise, have your chin into your shoulder, cover real fast. No, it's not just those habits. It's these habits. They weren't taught. They weren't brought out. That's what I'm talking about.